warm welcome from our side, from Anil and my side, to the Q&A session. And today, as I said, we will update you a little bit about the general concept of data spaces, what IDSA does, and also give you some insights into the upcoming events at IDSA. Please, next slide. So as I said, we have a short introduction and then room for Q&A. So most of the time we are dealing in the data economy with a bilateral data exchange. You know it. You share your data, for example, via email and so. And we are now heading to a phase where a close community is sharing data so few to few. And what we're aiming for is really a decentralized concept. So a dynamic data ecosystem, many share data with many. Next slide. The reality actually is that 80% of industrial data is really never used. So why is this so? Next slide. We think that most of the companies are facing some kind of balancing act. So there's the prospect of a sharing economy and data interoperability, but on the other hand, you don't want to give away your company's secrets. So this is where the data space approach comes in. It's connecting all kinds of data endpoints and last slide. Thanks. And our definition of a data space is that it's the sum of all data endpoints that are able to share data. So what we are dealing with here is a federated data architecture. So we have no physical data integration. We leave the data where it is, but we are also having this interoperability aspect to it. So no silos, no vendor dependency, data sovereignty. That actually means that you are still the owner of your data and you can decide what happens with your data. So you can attach specific terms and conditions to the data before handing it over to the data consumer, and the data consumer has then to accept these terms and conditions. You can also trace back what happened with your data. So this traceability aspect is also part of that. And you're dealing with trusted participants. So trusted participants make up the data space, so you can share data with people that you know, and all of them are adhering to a common governance framework. So in the next slide now, you can then see how a data space in a schematic team can be explained. So starting from the right side here, it's the different companies are using usage policies. For example, you can use my data for a specific amount of time or just specific data sets. These are then in a industrial cloud, and all of these dots that you can see where IDS is mentioned, these are the connectors. So the connector is a gateway to a data space. And if company A or company 1 wants to share data with company 2, then the connector is there to handle the data exchange. Wait a minute. I think there are still some people also in the waiting room. Okay. No.
Yeah.
Perfect. So I said it before that companies are facing this kind of balancing act. And as you can see here in this graph, this showcases again how we want to link and how we want to balance this this act. So on the one hand, there's this data ownership and data security aspect. On the other hand, the sharing economy and interoperability. And we see that this data sovereignty is actually the balancing factor. We see that because the ownership aspect of it is something that is really crucial to a lot of different companies. So as I said before, you don't want to give away your company's secrets. You still want to retain your ownership. And with data sovereignty, you decide what terms and conditions can be attached to the data. Next slide, please. So you still have to make a choice, do I plug in or not? So bringing interoperability and trust to data systems, that requires really informed decision making. and deformed decision making and the trustworthiness of partners and components that are being used. These are the prerequisites of a functioning data space. So how do you do that? This is where IDSA comes in. Next slide. So by now, IDSA has 184 members, and the members are really the backbone, as you can see here, from our organization. Around 860 people and counting are contributing to our assets, and we have members from 31 countries by now. So, and as you can see in this picture here, all of our members come from different fields of expertise. We have large corporations, we have institutes, universities. So some of them are more in the research area, but others are also industry grade, product focused. So for example, we have companies like Huawei, like Google and Microsoft, but also smaller universities like University of Tokyo. But all of them are working towards our goal to establish a global standard, the baseline for data spaces. Next slide. So at IDSA, our main responsibilities are first the coordination of activities of our IDSA community. You have seen our community and our members on the last slide, and you can see it right now here that we want to have this co-creation with our members for the so-called IDS standard, which should become then a global standard in the end. We have also a management of repositories, so functional specifications, technical documentation, and support of open source implementations. And what we are doing, for example, every Monday with our Monday morning call, so the ecosystem building call, we want to engage our members to talk with each other. So community management is also a really another pillar of our responsibilities. We are dealing with a lot of networking. We want to engage networking also via our events, and we also try to find the perfect matches. So matchmaking is also part of our responsibility. And as I said, the ecosystem building call is a great opportunity to showcase new projects, to showcase what your company does, and sometimes there are also interesting collaborations happening afterwards. Next slide, please. So coming to our main assets, and maybe you've already heard about that. So if you see this magic triangle, the upper part deals with the IDS reference architecture. This is the blueprint for data spaces with detailed specifications. So really the reference, how to build a data space. We have the IDS rulebook. This is how to implement IDS in the real world. The certification scheme, this is third-party conformity that allows for informed decision-making. And here we are dealing with certification, for example, of the organization, but also of components. We have first success stories here. The T-Systems connector was certified, as well as one from VTT and from the Gate Institute. So you can also inform yourself on our IDS website about the certification process and about what kind of certifications are on the market. Same goes for the portfolio of open source building blocks. In this case, our GitHub repository. Most of our open source building blocks are there. And if you're interested to collaborate with us and become a member of IDSA, you can also access even more repositories there. Next slide. So all in all, this is again a graph that showcases how data sharing in the data space can take place. I don't want to repeat myself, but in this case, you can see here that the data owner has this usage policy on his mind, and he wants to share, for example, a specific data via an IDS certified connector in this case. And then the data sharing and the data exchange takes place between these connectors, and the usage policies, if they are accepted by the data user, then the data is shared. You can also see here in this graph that there are also other mandatory and optional additions to the data space, for example, the broker, the clearinghouse, the identity provider, vocabulary, You can find more information about that in some of our brochures. For example, the IDSA Visionary brochure goes into detail what we offer, what are our assets, what's optional and mandatory. And you can also read through our rule book, our governance scheme of a data space, where we also deal with the additions to a data space. And we also put some arguments on the table of why some of these are really important and why others are more, can be dealt with in a more flexible manner. You can have them as an addition to that or not. So I'll leave it here as that, and I would like to go to the next slide. I think this is now where you, Anil, will take over, because we also want to showcase a little bit one of our main assets that is now in development, and that's the data space protocol, which shall become an internationally recognized standard.
Yeah, thank you, Julien, for the excellent introduction. And I'm terribly sorry for forgetting to introduce myself. So I'm Anil, working as a senior project manager in the technology and architecture team. So today I remain at your disposal for your tech-related questions. But returning back to the presentation, so I would like to introduce the data space protocol and also explain its positioning and functionality and benefits that could be really useful for everyone who is interested in data spaces and data sharing. So the previous slide, actually, I would like to go for a second. So this one is showing a really perfect world picture according to the IDS compliant data spaces. So of course, we always say that these connectors work in harmony, but this is not always the case, because we have some interoperability problems between the connectors as well. So that's why actually data space protocol comes in to ensure this interoperability and seamless communication between the connectors, because without that there are a lot of problems, including limited interoperability and standards that are not compatible and conflicting formats between connectors and datasets. So this is actually a protocol that is dictating how to behave in which stage of the data sharing. This is very similar to the other protocols that we already know, that we already use many times, like HTTP is one of them, Swift on the other hand, or Bluetooth, or the widely used GSM is another one. So all of them are having the similar motivation behind, because there are parties, there are organizations that want to share something, whether it's data, money, or whatever, but there is no protocol or no way to dictate how these parties should behave or how these parties should act, what should they do. So basically, data space protocol is for that, and it's dictating, it's standardizing the data exchange according to a model, and which is very much interested in covering this two of the 4 layers of the new European data interoperability framework. One of them is technical and semantic. So basically, it's giving a basis for technical and semantic interoperability, and then you build on top of it according to your custom requirement. It's also possible, I think, to say that it's covering the organizational interoperability to some extent, because it's providing some processes to be applied during the data exchange. But of course, its weight on technical and semantic layers are much more heavy than the others. So it's basically showing you a way to share data. So it's consisting of 3 layers, which you can think of 3 subsequent steps that are happening during the data exchange. So first, there's the catalog protocol where the data provider is making the data sets available according to DCAT. to a structure that is following PCAP actually. And then there comes the contract negotiation protocol, where parties negotiate the data sharing, the data exchange between themselves according to the data usage terms. So they define how long the data will be used and for what purposes, in which context, and under which exceptional conditions the data can be used. And then they make a negotiation and they finalize the negotiation phase. Then comes the transfer process protocol, which is about ensuring that data is shared securely and also following the conditions that have been previously agreed upon. So it's basically giving you a structure for the data sharing process. So this is a little bit like ordering and standardizing the data sharing between parties, because that was needed. And as you can see in the slides, it has been, so it's not kind of a protocol that we draft in the IDSA head office in Dortmund. We are just trying to drive this forward and trying to create occasions to drive this forward, but it has been mainly a demand and a necessity by the industry itself, because its roots, actually the roots of the data space protocol lie back into 6 years ago, when there has been some IDS communication protocol. Then it turned into data space protocol with more and very strict specifications. So that's why a lot of parties, a lot of our members came together to contribute to it, to co-define it, and to modify it according to their needs. And also there are a lot of adopters in the industry, and because this is of utmost importance for corporations and organizations to use it, so that we can learn from it and then improve the standard. So it's the perfect learning ground industry. And on the other hand, it's also being adopted by R&D projects. There are also more. This slide is missing some of them. This is also very important for the R&D project to adopt it, because that's also giving a perfect experiment opportunity. So in brief, it's also touching a lot of values and aspects that are of utmost importance by IDSA perspective, like data sovereignty is one of them. So it's basically maintaining the data sovereignty by allowing data providers to set and enforce their own usage policies. And interoperability is also technically and semantically achieved as a basis. But of course, it's not given a complete solution for technical and semantic, which is impossible, because it's differing from one case to another, as you know. And it has a flexible and modular architecture that separates the data plane and control plane, so that it provides you a opportunity for further scaling your data space. And so it's also providing a foundational interoperability needed for data exchange. And then you can just use it, and then you can build on top of it and make your own customizations according to your request and to your needs. So if you have any further questions about Radar, so we can gladly take them in the next round. Then I can give the mic back to you, Julien.
Yes, of course. Maybe one more comment to the radar. So as you can see right now on the slide, the radar really functions as military radars on the outskirts of this radar. They are more first phase development stages of data spaces. The more you venture to the center, the more mature these data spaces become. And if you click on the link to the data space radar.org, you can also find even more information. So you can filter according to domains, to development stages. We are using Power BI for that. So you can also find useful information about the geographical concentration, where are the most data spaces right now in development stages, or you can also filter according to the technical components and so on. So we are working on that. We are also collaborating with the Data Space Support Center with the DSSC, and you can find even more information in the upcoming months. So this is something that I can really gladly advise to you to have a look at, because the data space radar is something where we really analyze the market and where we give you some insights about what's happening in the market. Please, next slide. So right now, it's again about the radar itself. We have 178 total entries, and as you can see in this picture here, you can also find different data spaces in different domains. So for example, 11 in supply chain, some 10 are related directly to agriculture, to health, energy, automotive, and so on. So 93 use cases are currently on the market, and data spaces itself are 84. So it's still a really growing and new and exciting technology development with regards to data spaces. And as you can see, it's also not limited to, for example, the manufacturing domain. Maybe you know it. As IDSA, we started as industrial data spaces, but we clearly saw the intent of a lot of different sectors to also develop data spaces. So now that we are international data spaces, we also want to cover different domains and different aspects where data sharing is vital. Next slide. So how are we doing that to showcase what other countries and what other sectors are doing with data spaces? This is something where we also heavily rely on our network of hubs, of competence centers and research labs. And as you can see, of course, we started in Europe, but we also venture out to other countries. For example, we have a hub with the University of Tokyo in Japan, and the Data Society Alliance. There's the Digital Connect Society in Malaysia, and we also have one of our newest additions, a hub in Brazil. So the aspect of data spaces is really a global phenomenon. A lot of different organizations are actively working in this regard. But what our hubs also do is they organize, for example, specific events like the Data Space Discovery Day. That's there to showcase the current status of data spaces, showcase what IDSA does, and also bring national champions to these events. So raise awareness about data spaces, get more people working together, and also develop data spaces. This is something where our hubs really come in, but they also, as it's mentioned here, it's also competence centers and research labs. So they're also actively researching on data space technologies and data space components. So one more example from my side when it comes, for example, to the University of Tokyo. So when we are having a partnership with a hub, it has to be a non-profit organization. So most of the time it's universities or research institutions. And they, of course, have the capability to also research specific aspects of data sharing. And with the University of Tokyo, they are right now experimenting with the interoperability between their connector, it's called the JADO connector, and the EDC. So this is, for example, really interesting. They're also using a testbed approach, a test environment, how data sharing can function. So this is all from my side from the IDSA hubs. Please, next slide. So all in all, I know it's a lot of information that we are covering here, but I like this this view graph here in particular because it showcases you a little bit what we are really offering. So the IDSA concepts on the lower part of this picture, the reference architecture model, the data space protocol that was presented by Anil, the rule book, and then also our knowledge base that gathers all the knowledge that is created in our organization. When you see the upper part of this picture, you can also see that we are aligning our architectures and thought leadership on data spaces with other relevant institutions like GaiaX, like iShare, BDPA, Fireware, and so on, and also DataEX, which is from Japan. We are promoting open source solutions, the IDSA community, Eclipse, and Fireware. And we also have IDS certified data connectors. We talked about that before. So, for example, one from T-Systems and one from VTT, among others. The radar was also mentioned with projects on the radar and data spaces that are in different development stages. We also have, of course, impressive first data space success stories. For example, in the automotive domain, it's Catena X, mobility, it's Iona X, and mobility data space. And for supply chain, it's a smart supplier network. But all of this is, as you can see here, really making it ready for global standardization, bringing the IDS concepts to global standardization. This is our main vision and our main mission at IDSA. And as you can see here, we are dealing with the great standardization bodies like ISO, the European Sensor-Leg, IEEE, and W3C. So the data space protocol, as was mentioned before, is on its way to become a global recognized standard, in this case an ISO, a JTC standard. And you can also, if you are interested in working with us, be part of an expert group on standardization and actively contribute to that. Also when it comes to the data space protocol, to make it capable of being a internationally recognized standard. This is something that we offer once you are a member. Next slide, please. So before we go on with some general informations about how can you be updated with our IDSA community and what kind of events are coming up, I just want to stop here for a moment and leave the floor to our participants. So if there are any questions, please raise your hand or feel free to share a comment. So we have from Antonio one question: is there any ongoing work between IDSA and Simple?
Yes, I can maybe jump in here. So I don't have a very conclusive answer to this, but you may have seen in the data space protocol slide that Simple Open is one of the data space protocol adopters. So it will be part of the tech toolkits that they will be using. Other than that, there are some unofficial alignments or unofficial exchange of thoughts, because Simple Consortium is also partly consisting of some of our members. So we can say there are some alignments which are not at the moment official, but so I know that Simple people are very well knowledgeable about IDS standards, I would say.
I hope this answer was sufficient for you. There are a lot of ongoing talks also with other institutions. Maybe coming back to the view graph that we showed, this of course is not limited to the icons that we put on this graph. We are of course also in talk with Simple and with related initiatives and organizations. Thanks to Anna. We also have a direct link to the relation between the Simple and the data space protocol. So please feel free to take a look if you're interested in the relationship between data space protocol and Simple. So, any other questions from your side? Otherwise, we would go on with the presentation. By now, I see none. So, Anil, maybe you can share your screen once again.
Sure. I see that Jarek Kowalski is typing, but okay, I will share my screen anyway. Oh. There you are.
Okay, yeah. So please feel free to comment or share your question also in the chat, or just raise your hand. Of course, this presentation is intended to be more interactive. So if you have anything that you want to speak about, where you need more information, feel free to do so. Otherwise, I would just go on right now. So maybe the next slide, please. So we talked a lot about how can you co-create with us, and one of the things that is essential to our working relationship with our community are the different working groups. And as you can see here, we have the working group architecture, which takes place on a quarterly basis, and underneath that, that's also the reference architecture 5.0, so the newest iteration of the reference architecture, which happens on a bi-weekly basis, the data space protocol also on the bi-weekly basis, and we also have a sub-working group on personal data, which takes place on a monthly basis, because we also saw the need to align with experts about the integration of personal data when it comes to data sharing. We have a working group on certification, in this case, both on a monthly basis, a sub-working group on testbed and IDS testing approaches, the rule book, which takes place on a monthly basis, and also working group training. We saw really the need to come up with a data space body of knowledge, which can then be used as a syllabus for courses that can be conducted to form a data space training scheme. And in this case, also some countries really expressed the need to have some kind of chartered data space experts or data space engineers. And for that, for this kind of professional training, you need, of course, to have the right syllabus in place. And in this working group, you can actively participate and work on a course scheme. So these working groups, of course, they are reserved for members and partners of IDSA only. But as you can see, they offer a lot of advantages for you. And you are not really a passive member, but you are actively contributing with respect to the fields of your interest and the fields of your expertise. You can work in these different working groups. There are also task forces, so the task force of a legal framework. We also see here, of course, the need that we have to have the legal framework in place, and the task force on energy interoperability, and the task force China. I'm just looking at the chat. Okay. And Anna also mentioned that Simple will be part of our global data spaces Connect in Vienna. I will come to this in a moment, because there we also showcase a little bit that interoperability is key, and how Simple is testing and facilitating that. So please, next slide. So coming a little bit to the working groups itself. So the third meeting of the IDSA working group architecture, this is a little bit a recap and also an outlook what is discussed in these kind of working groups. So in the last one, there were, of course, updates on the data space protocol and on standardization, workshops on the reference architecture 5.0 on trust and observability. A first publication, for example, from the reference architecture model 5 is planned for this fall. And in the context of IDSA and governance and reference architecture model, members also survey here really if everything is in line. You can definitely look at the survey on governance perspective section in IDSA reference architecture model if you just scan the QR code, and the context of IDSA section can also be looked upon if you just scan the QR code. Again, I'm looking at the chat. Okay, there's one question from Sanketh. Could you point me to the right IDSA data space that deals with mapping data generated by different tools? So the question here is that coming through looking at the radar, the cost for vendor login and silos arise from data being logged in to the application that is generating and storing it. So for the safety analysis, it's done using one software and threat analysis using another tool. So the question here is really how do we manage and deal with mapping data that's generated by different tools? It's also maybe a question to you, Anil.
Yes, so I would not be able to answer this in very deep detail, but I can definitely say some stuff like for example, we have some major data space examples in the radar like mobility data space, for example, where they have some scenarios where diverse tools should be involved in different aspects of analysis, like safety, threats of or performance. So it might be nice to maybe contact them to ask about how do they integrate, how do they handle this integration of data and standardization of data that is coming from different sources, because they have like cases that include data generated by traffic management systems or safety analysis software, and they may have also threat assessment tools, which I think they have. So that might be nice to do that. And also a smart connected supplier network could be also an interesting example and a major one. But for practical implementation, you may also want to look at connector-based solutions, because mostly this kind of safety analysis or stuff can also be done by running apps that are running in the connector. But I think these implementations of data spaces that are major should be contacted separately and to ask about how do they manage this thing. And maybe besides that, there are also some occasions where we are bringing together our members, like Monday morning calls, where people are giving more details about their implementations. Yeah, I would say that. So in brief, so the reference architecture model provides guidance on interoperable connectors, how to map data, how the data integration across tools can happen, but on a very high level. And if you want to go into details, then it would be nice to get bilateral contacts with this major data space solutions, I would say. And maybe, Julien, if you can give just a brief detail about in which occasions these organizations, these implementations are presenting their work, I think that would be also nice to hear.
Yes, I will come to this also in a moment when we are talking about the upcoming events. I think this is also then pretty interesting to get a holistic view about what is currently in development. And you can also then find how different tools are interacting with the data space protocol. Anna was so friendly to just already put the simple into perspective when it comes to the upcoming event in Vienna, but there's also more to come. So please go to the next slide. I will quickly go through the working groups here, but you can also find more information about them on our website. And this again is a little bit a recap. So for example, in the last working group meeting on certification, we aligned the certification scheme 2.0 to the reference architecture 5.0 and the rulebook. So as you can see, we are also updating and aligning all of our assets so that you don't have to worry that something is outdated in the end. That also means that everything is more dynamic. So we are also including the data space protocol compliance testing, and we also want to have this certification scheme in the end as a more modular approach. So the next steps here when it comes to certification is create a vision paper to gather the market needs and the scope of certification 2.0 and options to drive it forward will also be part of this vision paper. And here, for example, it's also a shout out to new members of IDSA because we're also looking for a new co-chair of this working group. So next slide, please. Yeah, the working group training was also having another working group meeting in September of this year. The document itself is available for IDSA members only, but the final version is right now getting prepared. So as I said before, this data space body of knowledge, this could act as a syllabus for the training of experts on data space technology, and the content that's being discussed should in the end be part of the syllabus. So we also right now in this next phase, so the next steps are to kickstart the work on the new IDSA qualification data space business consultant. So this is really a title that can be obtained, and we are right now working on the qualification aspects to become a data space business consultant. So there will also be continuous update on the data space body of knowledge. Next slide. And this is the last one. It will happen today. So today we have our monthly meeting for the IDSA working group rulebook. Next slide, please. And the proposed agenda for today is that we give you an update on the status of the Data Space Support Center Rulebook Initiative. We update on ISO AWI 2151, updates of activities and specifications from the Eclipse working group and how to map that into the rulebook and further work plan for the work group. That's alignment again on current topics, GDPR, consent handling, the application plan, and so on. So you will know more about that if you are part of our members and be part of the rule group. As I said before, the rule book is our governance scheme, and more governance related aspects are here dealt with. So I think it's also interesting if you are part of this working group to attend today to see where the journey will head to. Next slide, please. So the next iterations of our general working group meetings, as I said before, we just provided you now with a short recap what was discussed in September, and the next round will come by the beginning of December. So we have the next iteration of the working group meeting rulebook on December 2nd. December 3rd is architecture certification on December 4th, and the working group on training on December 19th. You can fill in the form to register to our working group newsletter if you click on that, and you will also receive some updates. And if you click on the other button, you can also find more information on the working groups itself. So these are our core IDSA assets, and as I said also before, we are in a continuous development when it comes to the assets, and we definitely need a lot of different voices from different corporations and different institutes to make the vision of data spaces on a global scale happen. And these working groups are the best way for you to actively participate. Next slide. So also something that was mentioned a couple of times today was the ecosystem building call, or also called the Monday morning call, and reserved to IDSA members, and a best way to present current projects, or start discussions, share experiences, share best practices, and update on the latest news on IDSA adoption. So if you are interested in showcasing what you're doing, please contact my colleague Carlos Gonzalez. He's the owner of the ecosystem building call, and right now I think we are occupied with presentations till the end of November, but there's always room to also have at least 2 presentations in one ecosystem building call, and with 2 presentations we also try to bring together different actors from the same domain. So for example, a Monday morning call that's really focused on the energy domain or on the green deal day domain. This is something where we also try to make some bridges and also do some matchmaking. But it's a great way to showcase what you're doing and also to network with other like-minded spirits. So this is the ecosystem building call. Please, the next slide. Yes, that was also mentioned before. On November 13th, we have one of our last big events for this year. This is the Global Data Spaces Connect, and the tagline here is unlocking potentials and accelerating business. We have many different participants on this day in Vienna, and we are doing this in collaboration with iShare and the DIO from Austria. There are still tickets, and you can secure a ticket if you just scan this QR code here. But for the data space community itself, I think it's a really important and very interesting event, especially if you're new to this community. An in-person event is always something that is better suited to get to know the persons behind the data space community. And in this case, in Vienna, I think it's the best opportunity to start discussions. Next slide. And it's of course not the only event. So as you can see, we are also planning for the year ahead. And one of the biggest events that will come up in March of next year is the Data Spaces Symposium. This is actually the 3rd iteration of this symposium. We had the first one in The Hague, the second one in Darmstadt, and now in Warsaw. We will have the 3rd one, Share Data, Unlock Value, Boost Impact. These are the main aspects that should be dealt with in this symposium, and this is one of the biggest events that we are having at IDSA. So please, if you're interested, we will keep you updated about that once the agenda is finalized and when you can register for that. But keep it in the back of your mind. The Data Space Symposium, for example, in Darmstadt, we had around 700 participants, and I'm really optimistic that we will even have more in Poland next year. Next slide. So right now, of course, we have the Q&A session, but there are a lot of other events coming up. Now November is again a pretty packed month. There's an online webinar on data spaces with Bitkom. My colleague Mario will do that on November 6th. Also virtually, I talked with Christoph, who will present data spaces to the Danish Data Space Forum on November 14th. This is in itself the inauguration of the Danish Agency for Digital Government. This will take place again on November 14th and 15th. I will be traveling to the Gaia X Summit, and here the ambition is to empower global data spaces and shaping tomorrow's cloud infrastructure. This will take place in Helsinki, and I will be on stage mainly on November 14th. November 21st, there's the Experiencia Tech 2024, and there's a keynote from one of our board members, to Burkhardt, about the concept of data spaces and Catena X as the flagship automotive project. This will happen in Medellin in Colombia, and also if you happen to be there, feel free to go to the Experiencia Tech. And one of the last things that's again online, that's the CG webinar, data spaces as enablers for AI and the digital product passport. Again, this will take place on November 28th. So next slide, and I think we are almost over. Yeah, you can also check back frequently for video stories. We also upload some videos on YouTube, and you can check also our archive. For example, if you're interested in the last iteration of the Data Space Symposium or the Data Space Discovery Days, we have some nice news snippets and nice videos that you can check out. Also, some of our sessions are recorded, and there you can just watch it on your demand. Next slide. Also, something that is continuously updated on our site is, of course, our LinkedIn site. So also here, if you're interested, please scan the QR code and you will be updated about all the different developments, the outcomes of the working groups, news that are shared about our assets, about our community, and about new events. Next slide. Yes, and we talked a lot about what are the benefits and the of being a member of IDSA. Becoming a member of IDSA is really not that difficult at all. You download the membership application in the first step. You send the filled form to our email address in the second one, and then we can welcome you on board. Anna Derevianco is the main manager for our membership. And if you have any questions, feel free to reach out to her. She will gladly reply to every question that you have. You can also scan the QR code here to come directly to the membership application. So join the Data Space Pioneers, become a member of IDSA. As I said, it's not a passive membership, it's really co-creation and being active in our community. Next slide. Data sharing is better than playing alone. I hope we could convey this message a little bit today with our presentation of this Q&A session. And if you have any questions, any remarks, feel free to just ask that right now. We still have 2 minutes left. Otherwise, I would say thank you for your attendance today. Was a little bit difficult today because of some train delays, but I think we managed it quite well.
Yes, I believe so. So I hope everything is clear or close to clear. If you have any further questions, please just feel free to reach out to us, and we will try to answer them as best as possible. So wish you all a wonderful rest of the week, and thank you very much. See you next time.
See you then. Bye-bye.